My name's Connor Ward, I'm an autistic speaker and consultant, and 5 years ago I was diagnosed as autistic. Well, I wasn't. I was diagnosed as having high-functioning autism spectrum disorder, formerly Asperger's. What a lengthy thing. Do I agree with that wording now? No, it's very outdated, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Let's go back to when I first discovered I was autistic. I figured it out when I was about 15, and I didn't feel the need to have an official diagnosis. For many years, actually. I felt it was necessary upon a social level to understand why things were going the way I did, but I didn't even fully understand to be autistic then. I just knew that it seemed aligned with, from what I knew of various very stereotypical portrayals of autism in media, I think was based upon what my idea of being autistic was then. But it worked. It worked for a bit. I didn't even tell my mum about it. When it didn't work was when I was 18. I went to a job, and the job was not allowing me to work. There were many barriers there, which put me out to be different from the vast majority of the people there. And that's the way I describe it, different. But unfortunately, because of those differences in that environment, I was at deficit. My actual diagnosis, I've told the story before on the channel, I'm not going to go into it more. 5 months is what it took, start to finish. I was really lucky. And I feel before I go into this stuff, I realise that around the world there is a vast, varying degree of accessibility, funnily enough, to diagnostic services themselves. My life goal is that it shouldn't be sitting within medical. I believe that there are medical implications of being autistic, but it's not something that needs to be sat in the medical deficit model. And by moving it out of the medical deficit world, it would be more accessible to more people, as it should be, to have answers. I understand my privilege in the fact I have a diagnosis. Am I the most grateful for it now? 50-50. The more I reflect upon my diagnosis, it was more for other people than it was for me. I was kind of understanding of myself. I wanted to understand certain things about myself, and I'd say about 40% of the 40% of the output of the diagnosis was me figuring things out for myself. But I've seen evidently by many people, you don't actually need the diagnosis for that. That's about self-acceptance and realising that difference is okay, and being in a world that's inclusive of that. Whether that world is the entire world or just keeping it small. Having a diagnosis is the thing that allows other people to believe your struggles, which is very weird. The most recent understanding of autism is that it's a neurological difference. Autism is the word to describe that neurological difference. Difference is the key there. We have a different set of strengths and weaknesses compared to the vast majority in our human population. Because of the way our society is built, a lot of processes in it are not inclusive of our differences, therefore we are at deficit because of that. Which basically just means that there's just loads of rubbish out there. There's so much expectation from people that doesn't need to exist. And that's what I feel a diagnosis does. It allows you to it allows people to lower their expectations for you, and then just take whatever you whatever you do as positive, which I think surely that's just what we need from all people. We shouldn't be putting such a high bar of expectation. The vast majority of mental health problems come from unmet need, whether that is personal need or what you believe is the perceived need from you to society, which tells me that we're all too hard on ourselves. And in autistic people, those bars are all over the place, meaning that there's a lot of unmet need there. So it's very bizarre that a piece of paper allows other people in your life to go, okay, we won't expect too much from them. And then we go and whoop it out of the park, into which people are like, oh, wow. And to fellow autistic people, we should be celebrating our achievements when we do have them, because we are fighting against so many barriers, unnecessary most of the time. I don't consider myself a YouTuber anymore, nor a content creator, mostly because, well, where is the content? Very, very stretched, isn't it? Few and far between. I mostly spend my time educating and trying to consult to create products and services that are far more inclusive for autistic people. And it becomes very clear the more you do that, Educating about autistic people is a massive part of it, but overall it's a cultural shift. It's about going, you need to let go of whatever you think society should be, or whatever you've been told society should be, and what people should be within that. The easiest example of this is, why is there such an obsession about eye contact? Is it really that necessary? No, you just think it is. Apparently I'm rude if I'm not giving you eye contact. I think that's a you problem more than it's a me problem. I'm not giving you eye contact so I can actually concentrate on what you're saying better. You just want it because it's meant to soothe your own anxieties around not being listened to. But if you finish speaking and let me reciprocate that I've understood what you said, surely that should be enough. There's far too much, I'm going to say obsession, actually, not on our part, well maybe partially, around the diagnosis itself. The diagnosis itself never actually tells you that much about the person and what's going to help that person to either just get by or, better yet, thrive. As I said, I don't like the labels on my diagnosis. High functioning puts a really weird expectations on me that I'm meant to just conform and be able to get along with what's expected from an average person. Whereas that's not the case. It shouldn't be the case for anyone. What is that idea? That's why we rejected functioning labels a long time ago in our community. The focus should just be on, I'm autistic, we have differences in the areas of socialisation and communication. I don't like calling it routines, consistencies, and sensory differences. 3 areas, 3 things where we can differ from neurotypicals. But believe it or not, neurotypicals can differ in those areas too. The labels that come with a diagnosis, whether that is disorder, spectrum, high functioning, labels require people to make assumptions. Assumption-based thinking is a neurotypical way of thinking, not an autistic way of thinking. An autistic way of thinking is to think of detail and to think of options. Like, how many times do you find yourself going, oh, I've got list full diagnosis? Or most of the time, sorry parents, but it's normally the parents that list the full diagnosis. I say favourite in inverted commas, sarcastically favourite, is when people say my ASD son. What does that mean? First of all, grammatically, my autism spectrum disorder son does not make sense. But if you're going to try and turn ASD into an adjective anyway, just use the word autistic. To bring it back to the high functioning on my own diagnosis, that means that people are assuming that I can do certain things or not do others. Most of the time with the high functioning assumption, it's that, but I then have to, if I were to say, and when I did back in 2016 tell people I have high functioning autism spectrum disorder, you've got to answer a million questions anyway. If I were to just go into a doctor's or a hospital or something and say high functioning, they may assume that I'd be okay with all the lights still being as bright and flickery as they are, because high functioning means that you can just put up with the stuff. You know, you're autistic, but you can get by autistic. The most important fact to get across, regardless of the diagnosis, because there are so many diagnoses now that have been given historically or presently, whether that's autism spectrum disorder, autism spectrum condition, Asperger syndrome, Kanner's autism, whatever, classic autism. There's so many labels there, but the most important thing is just to know that that person's autistic. So a diagnosis puts focus on assumptions as opposed to the person, when we should just be focusing on the person, because when we focus on the person, that person's needs get met. For the last year and a half, I've been inside my house. I've not had any needs, because there aren't needs in my house. It's all, I've set the expectation in this house. I've set the physical environment and stuff. Everything is how it should be in my world. But I had a big taste of reality the other week when I went to an event and really had to find myself explaining areas of difference. I was actually struggling to verbally do it, which was interesting. And would you believe it or not, side point, but most of the things that we were having to argue against were very unnecessary things that were just weird societal expectations. But yeah, I feel so funny about my diagnosis. I'm very grateful for it. I don't often use it anymore. Whenever I have to send the letter, I just send it. I don't read it. I often read the letter to laugh at the letter, if I'm honest, because it describes so many of my impairments. Do I blame society for having it in that place in the first place? No, because we're humans, we learn. That's how we grow as a society. Do I think it's had a detrimental effect on every single autistic person? Yeah, because we've been told there's something wrong with us. So all of this actually leads into the fact I think this is my last time celebrating, and not that I am, well, marking my diagnosis anniversary. Because really, my anniversary of being autistic, well, I already celebrate that. It was my birthday. Because I was autistic from whilst I was in the womb. You know, your brain forms in a certain way. My brain formed to be autistic. And I've actually, whenever I've done recent things, I used to say at the beginning I was diagnosed as autistic when I was 18. I've admitted that now because I've realised that's really... it's only useful in certain scenarios. So on the whole, I'm not going to talk about my diagnosis or when I got it. That's not the important thing to me. I don't believe in the method that diagnoses are given. I'm basically, I'm doing my degree. I'm going to do my master's. I'm going to do my PhD because I want to change it. I want to make people be far more accepting of themselves, society be far more accepting of us, and making a world that allows autistic people to thrive should they want to. Let's stop penalising people from being different from what we expect them to be. And a diagnosis doesn't do anything to help that. One final aspect that I think I need to bring up with this is I was diagnosed at a mental health place. I was told at the time, oh, but it's not a mental health condition. But it still made me feel, you know, oh, it's bunged in the same category. It's often also bunged in the same category as learning disability. No, it's neither. There's a high percentage of autistic people that have learning difficulties. There's a high percentage of autistic people that experience mental health difficulties most of the time due to unmet need. But it's neither. It's a neurotype. We understand all different types of diversity in humans. We have neglected neurodiversity. So yeah, I think we're in an interesting age. I'm going to do my own personal bit. I feel weird about my diagnosis. It's very often not useful anymore, but we're still in a transitional point. So for lots of people it still is. And it's going to be a while, probably not in our lifetime even, until we get to that point where I want us to be. I'm not going to celebrate it today. I've often properly celebrated it, gone out for a meal and stuff. No, don't feel the need. What I do feel the need today, in all honesty, is to go and play some Fortnite because it's a new season today. So I'm grateful for it. I don't define myself by it. I define myself now. I can't always do that. I often require the help from others around me, but the diagnosis is one part of that. It's not the entire picture, and I really hope that the idea of that changes. And well done to the clinicians and practitioners out there that are making steps towards that. I know, for example, there are people who will still use criteria from autism spectrum disorder, but they'll just talk about a diagnosis of autism, which, you know, isn't 100% there, but it's certainly in the right direction. It could be very easy to label all medical and clinical people as bad. Nope, there are people doing good work in it. I'm self-assured in myself, I think, is the biggest thing. Like, a difference between now and being diagnosed. I'm fully chill with myself. I know my areas of strength, and I know my areas of weaknesses. I'm able to work on those weaknesses because I know what they are. So I'm grateful for that opportunity. But shouldn't we all be doing that? To be better people. How cheesy. Oh. Cool. Okay, I'm sorry for that was a bit rambly, but I wanted to give a true reflection as to how I felt. And that is how I feel. So I'm not going to invalidate that. And yeah, I'll be interested to hear some of your thoughts on it if you disagree or agree. I don't think... I'm unsure about this one because I feel it's very out there, but hopefully I presented it in a way which isn't too out there. Life's very weird. We do weird ways of doing things, but we all do. We all have different ways of doing weird stuff. I'm going to stop now before I end up saying something weird. That was weird. Anyway, right, okay, bye. I'm going to play Fortnite.